Well, welcome to this major biblical site of the Temple Mount. There is no place like the Temple Mount. God in His sovereignty chose to dwell, especially in Jerusalem, but like a laser right here. Where the Dome of the Rock is where the temple was. When Solomon dedicated the temple, the glory of the Lord just filled it. The priests had to stop what they were doing. We're going to be talking about the events that happened up here. We're going to be showing you the original Temple Mount platform that Solomon built. We're going to be showing you where the altar was. We will be showing you where the temple was. We will be showing you all of the evidence. We're going to be talking about all of the major events that happened up here. We'll also see where the Antonia Fortress was. We'll see the famous eastern gate that Jesus would have walked through. We'll see Solomon's Portico, the expansion joints of the Temple Mount over the years, the royal Stoa, the likely place where Pentecost happened, and much more. So I'm really excited to show you this amazing site. So once again, this Temple Mount is what is just absolutely incredible, and how special to be here and to experience this. So we're going to be having a Bible time as well, faith lesson. So this is going to be absolutely overwhelmingly special. This is about the best you can get. I mean, there's a lot of special places in Israel, but this temple is, in the Temple Mount here, is where God resided in a special way. So we're going to have plenty of time up here to see all this. So are you ready to experience this?
Yes.
Okay, let's do this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to be looking at where the original Temple Mount platform that Solomon built was. And then we'll be looking at the expansions. Right here is where the corner was, and we'll be going down there and showing you how we know that. We're going to start here because we're just going to do a big circle around here. But right here is where the corner was of the original 500 cubit Temple Mount platform. So the original Temple Mount platform that Solomon built measured 500 cubits squared, or 861 feet by 262 meters. So right here would be a corner. Now what we're going to do is we're going to walk down there. We're going to show you how we know where that corner is, and that corner is the most important because from there we can locate the others. And I just want to say for the record that Lane Rittmeyer did all of the heavy lifting and a lot of the archaeological work up here to discover where the original Temple Mount platform was. So we have a corner up there we can see, and each side measures exactly 500 cubits, or 861 feet, or 262 meters. That's what's absolutely amazing about this. So that all the measurements line up perfectly. So right here is the corner. How do we know that? Well, there was a gate that Herod built called the Barclay Gate, and so we can see by archaeology from that side coming this way where this side is. So let's walk over here. But what I want you to just get now, where I'm standing right here, sighting down, this is the original. Herod the Great added on to the Temple Mount. So the Temple Mount has been enlarged. The Hasmoneans enlarged it, going this way. In fact, their line, the Hasmoneans, goes from right here to about halfway to that wall there. That was the Hasmonean expansion to the south. That was in about 140 BC. But the original Solomon built, and then the Hasmoneans just added onto one end. Okay, going about halfway to that wall there. Then Herod the Great enlarged not the eastern wall. The eastern wall has always stayed the same because the Kidron Valley is there, and to enlarge it that way is very difficult. Even to enlarge to the south is very difficult. But anyway, Herod the Great, he enlarged it about halfway from here to the wall, that way, and we'll be looking at it over here. He enlarged it to the south, and then from right here, he enlarged it to the west, and then where we'll see the corner up there, he enlarged it to the north. So he almost doubled the size of what it was. So this right here is the corner then. Right here is the corner of Solomon's original Temple Mount platform. 500 square cubits, or 861 feet, or 262 meters. So now let's walk around over here, and we're going to go up and we're going to see the corner up here. We're going to do a little cross country here. We're going to head on over to this side over here. This is great. We're the first ones up here. Okay, we're going to head right on over here. So now we are walking up to this corner up here. It's the northwest corner. The Temple Mount platform that Solomon built was quite large. Here is one of the stairs going up to the platform, so I'll pause here. In about 650, when the Muslims began building, the Dome of the Rock was dedicated in 691. When they were building it, the Muslims built another platform on top of this platform. So they raised a platform up and they built the Dome of the Rock on that platform. But during the time of Jesus and from Solomon, the original platform was down at this level here. Okay, now these aren't the original stones of the Temple Mount platform that Solomon built. These were put in later. Okay, so once again, we have a platform up there that the Muslims did, wasn't there during the time of Jesus or that Solomon built. However, the temple Herod the Great built was also on a platform that is very close to the height of the Muslim platform we see today. This is so because there were 12 or so steps leading from the main floor base we can see here that we're standing on to the women's courtyard and other chambers. Then more steps leading to the outer court of the temple where the altar and so forth were located. Then there were even more steps leading up to the temple itself. So taking all these steps into consideration, the height of Herod's temple in the time of Jesus was about the same as the height we see today of the Muslim platform. Okay, well, let's continue now on up to this northwest corner of the original Temple Mount platform that Solomon built. So this is going to be absolutely amazing. Okay, here in a moment, things are going to come alive. Okay, so what I want you to do now is I want you to stay on this side of these rocks right here. And you can get, some can get over there. We're going to stay right over here on this side. Stay on this side here. These are the stones from Solomon or Hezekiah's time right here. We're going to get along here. If some want to get up on top of the stairs, they can. Let's just leave this right here bare. In a moment, you can walk on them and stuff. If some want to be here on that side, you can, but let's leave these stones right here open so we can see them. Okay, let's leave these open here because I'm going to explain some things to you. So right here, see how this stone is different from this stone here? And then you see these stones, how big they are? You see how these are changed? This is the original wall of the Solomon's Temple Mount platform here. Right here is the corner. Then it goes from here and it follows basically the edge of the Muslim platform to the eastern wall. From right here to the eastern wall measures exactly 861 feet 262 meters, 500 cubits. Exactly. And then from the eastern wall down there is part of the wall that protrudes out because there was a tower down there. This right here, we know, is the northwest corner of Solomon's Temple Mount platform here. Now also, do you notice how this wall here, look down that wall there, that runs perpendicular with the Muslim platform? See how the angle changes? So the original went down right down there. Okay? The Muslim platform doesn't run parallel with the eastern wall. This does. This is the parallel line from the eastern wall. So from right here to the eastern wall is 500 cubits, 861 feet, 262 meters. From here to where we were at down there, 861 feet, 262 meters, 500 cubits. And this once again runs exactly parallel with the eastern wall. So this is how Lane was able to calculate that this was the corner. Then also by archaeology down at the Barclay Gate, and by seeing some bends in the walls and changes in the stones on the additions that were made. So we can see where the Hasmonean addition platform enlargement began because the stones change. And there's a curious bend in the wall that kind of goes out. When you look down, you can kind of see it. There's a bend in the wall. So once again, we have exactly 500 cubits, 861 feet, 262 meters, exactly. From that point down there to the bend in the wall, 500 cubits, 861 feet, 262 meters. From here to there, 500 cubits, 861 feet, 262 meters. So we know this is the original platform that Solomon built. We also know that these are ancient stones because we can't see the boss now. You remember what a boss is? Okay. This has been filled in. We have photos, Lane took them back in the 1960s that show this was lower, and it showed the boss of these stones. They're a different type of boss. They're the same boss that can be found at the lower part of the eastern gate. There are ancient stones down there. A lot of the eastern wall has been rebuilt, but part of it has not been rebuilt. So there are ancient stones with this type of boss dating back to Solomon's time that are at the base of the eastern gate, at the base of the eastern wall. I want to show you here these stones. You can tell by the boss. This is the boss right here. This here sticks out. You can see that the way this is the way it sticks way out is that this is from Solomon's time. This is how we know this. These are Solomonic stones, or later during Hezekiah's time. You can just tell by the bosses and the outlines in these stones here. They're just very, very different than the other stones up above. So these are the original stones of the Temple Mount platform that Solomon would have built. Absolutely unbelievable to think about this. So this platform has existed for a long time. Contrary to what some would say that the temple was down in the city of David, we have this ancient ruins dating back to the time of Solomon. So this building wasn't built by Herod or as a Roman fort. It existed long before the Romans even thought about existing. This right here is going back to approximately about 950, 930 BC, and the same with those stones there. So this is the corner right here. And once again, you can see the angles, how they change. This runs parallel, exactly parallel with the eastern wall. It's called the Dome of the Rock because it's built on top of a rock, okay? And so right where that was at is where the Holy of Holies was at. The original platform would be higher that the temple was built on.
This would be the floor.
This would be lower, yeah, this would be a lower base stuff. And then below this here is close to bedrock down here. So yes, during the time of Solomon, thank you, there were different lengths of the cubit. Okay, a cubit basically was from here to the tip of a man's fingers. But during the time of Solomon, there was what was called a universal cubit that was used worldwide. It was called the royal cubit. And it measured about a little over 20 inches. That was the royal cubit that was used. So when the Mishnah records that it was 500 cubits, then it's using, we believe, the royal cubit, which is 20. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to go around here. We're going to walk around over here. We're going to do a big circle. Then we're going to come up on top of the platform up here. Okay, let's walk around this way here now. We're going to walk clear over against the wall over there. Okay, so we'll just pause here. So from that corner over there that we just established, all of this northern part, this would be what Herod would expand. Over here, up here, and then down that way. So he expanded on 3 sides, almost doubling the size of what was there. We're going to walk up here now and we're going to see where the Antonia Fortress was at. And we're going to look at some holes in the walls that show us where a covered pavilion. It had colonnades and then it had a covered walkway. Okay, now what we're going to see on our left here, this is where the Antonia Fortress was at. Remember we showed you that? Josephus in his writings talks about it being built on a rise, so you can see the bedrock upon which it would have been built. And then we're going to get over here. The trees kind of block it a little bit, but if you look up, I'll point it out. We're going to see where there's still some sockets in the wall where then beams would come out and cover and make a pavilion, a colonnade. So it would have posts, beams coming out in a covered area. You'll be able to see some of the sockets up here better. Once again, these trees cover some of them. So this would have been the Antonia Fortress up here in this corner. Okay, this is the Antonia. Now there's a school there. There's a school there now. If we can, we're going to be looking out this window right here if school's not in session when we come and do the traditional Via Dolorosa. We'll get up there. We come down to see the pools of Bethesda. Okay, so right now, there's one right there you can see really well. There is a socket hole. Okay, so that lets us know then that there was a pavilion, and there's more of them. Like I say, they're hard to see because the trees block some of them. So there was a pavilion here. So off of the Antonia, then there was a covered pavilion. Now, we'll kind of interlace the Bible in this. So when Paul is arrested on the Temple Mount platform, when he comes towards the end of his ministry, and he comes onto the Temple Mount and does his vows, and then he's arrested, then all the Jews are trying to kill him, beat him. He's going to then go up, partway up some stairs that went up here, and that's where he's going to address the crowd out here. You remember that? That's in Acts. We'll talk about some of these things when we have our complete Bible talk here. Okay, so this is the Antonia over here. So we're just going to kind of walk along the edge here. So what we're seeing here then, this line here, this would be the northernmost part of the Temple Mount platform. So once again, from that corner that we established, and we'll be walking back over there, all of this was added onto by Herod. But then this right here would be the edge of the platform. There's a school going on over here, so They're distracted by us. Most people don't come over here. When we get up here, we're going to go to the right and go back over towards the platform of the Muslim platform where Solomon's temple would have been. And of course, Herod the Great as well, the second temple that Zerubbabel built. Okay, so we're going to go back up over here now. Yes.
Which direction is this, or what side?
Okay, great, thank you. So this side right here is the northern side of the Temple Mount platform. Now we're walking south. To our left is the east. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back up here along this wall. All that you're walking on from these buildings here up to where the stairs are approximately is what Herod the Great added on to. This is what Jesus would have seen. This is where Jesus would have ministered. This is where he would, in the area up here where he would cast out, turn over the money changers.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll be doing a little review of things that have happened up here, and yeah, it's quite impressive. So now we are approaching then, once again, the area where the original Temple Mount platform would have been that Solomon built. Let's go ahead and step up here for a moment. Okay. So the Dome of the Rock is impressive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's impressive. The temple that Herod built was twice as big as this. It was much taller. It was absolutely unbelievable. Okay, so what you're going to notice here, this line right here, right when you get up on this first step of the platform, that would be the original wall of the platform that Solomon built. So once again, from that stone down there we've located, it runs 500 cubits using the royal cubit. Then it would be exactly 500 royal cubits, which is 861 feet, 262 meters. So you're standing right on the wall here. So this would be the approximate level of the platform that Solomon would build. And then do you see where that building is out there? We'll walk over there in a bit. Out in that area then you would have the altar where the sacrifices would be made. And inside you'd have some courts in there that we'll look at, some Gentile court, the Levite court, and different things. And then you would have the holy place and then the Holy of Holies. Now, just so you remember, even though the temple was huge, the original dimensions that God gave for the tabernacle of the dimensions of the holy place and the Holy of Holies stayed the same. They just had to have that the same, but they could make it much bigger, house whatever they wanted, as long as they kept those dimensions. Now this was just a glimpse of this platform area up here. We're going to come back and explore this in detail. We'll look at the Dome of the Rock. We're going to be doing a Bible teaching here, so this was just a glimpse. We're going to come back and explore this and look at everything in detail a little bit later. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go back down here. We're going to walk along the wall here, and now we're going to go to the eastern gate. Now also on this northern wall of this Muslim platform, there was also discovered by cistern 29. There's a ton of cisterns up here that we'll talk about in a moment, but along this original platform wall of Solomon, then there has been discoveries at cistern 29 that show that there is a wall here, an ancient wall here as well. So that gives us additional confirmation that this is the northern side of Solomon's original Temple Mount platform. So now we're going to walk over to the eastern wall over here and see some things over there. Watch your steps. We're doing a little cross country. Can you see how huge this Temple Mount platform was?
I look at this and I look at up here. You think of Temple Mount. You're thinking blocks, stone.
Uh-huh.
You're not thinking trees, orchards.
Right. Of course, in Jesus' time, there wouldn't have been these trees. It's just now it's so big and it's not used like it was back then. Because during Jesus' time, during these holy feasts, there would be millions of Jews that would come to Israel. Where we're going to go now is we're going to head straight this way, and we're going to go to the eastern gate. Before we do, though, let's pause, gather everybody together. Okay, you guys are doing good. Okay, so do you see the wall over there? Once again, that wall there roughly is then where the northern wall of the original Temple Mount platform that Solomon built. Okay, so we now have strong evidence of where the northern wall of the original Temple Mount platform was. Now it is going to come over here just left or north of the eastern gate. And at that point, just about 68 feet or 20 meters north of the eastern gate, there is an offset in the wall. And this offset then tells archaeologists that there was a tower here. So they believe there was a tower here on this northern part that could be for defense purposes. All right, so therefore we can get the northern wall of the original Temple Mount platform. And now going east, we're now going to look at the eastern side. So starting from this exact line, using this tower offset in the wall here, now we can go south on the eastern wall, and now we can see evidence there. Okay, we are going to see at the base of the eastern gate ancient stones with a boss type that dates way back, believed to be during the time of Solomon. So we have once again 500 royal cubits from that corner up there to the wall here. Measures exactly 500 royal cubits, 861 feet, 262 meters. And then from this offset, going this way, we're going to find, going south, a curious bend in the wall, where the wall changes and the stones change. That lets us know that that's the Hasmonean expansion. And what does that measure? Going from this offset here to the bend in the wall, it measures exactly 500 royal cubits, 861 feet, 262 meters. So let's go over here now. We'll walk right over here and then down this path. We're going to get close to it. Now, they guard this eastern gate, so be very, very respectful here. They're not going to let us get too close. They're going to tell us how close we can get, but they're guarding this. Do you know why? Because according to prophecy, the Messiah comes through here. It's there to stop us from damaging that wall, damaging the gate. It's all sealed up. See, they seal it up, and then they put a graveyard in front of it, blocking the Messiah. But he already came through there, and he can go through there and do what he wants anyway. So they don't want this wall to be damaged. So they're not going to let us get close because maybe we have, something to damage it with. So now we are entering into the area now of the original temple platform of Solomon. Okay? It's roughly going to be about right in here. Right in between these two rows of trees, roughly is going to be where Solomon's temple platform was. Some believe that the eastern gate lined up perfectly with the entrance, the gate to the temple, because it says that in the Mishnah. But what that is talking about, and once again, Lane Rittmeyer did a lot of this work, it's talking about the Nicanor gate, which was the gate when you came into the court before the temple, because they said you could look from the Mount of Olives and see into the temple. So some believe then that the temple would be over here on this side. But when you look at the evidence of the northern wall, it wouldn't fit. Plus, logistically, if you're on top of the Mount of Olives, you can see it right here and you're looking down. The eastern gate is much lower than what the temple was, so you could not see through the eastern gate. And this has been discovered, this is the eastern gate. You could not see You can't go bang and have a mirror. You can't do this. So therefore, the eastern gate was on the northern side of Solomon's Temple Mount platform. Okay. I used to believe, because I read that and thought that temple could be built out in this open area out there. I once proposed that. But then as I researched more and more, I learned through Lane Rittmeyer that what that was talking about was the Nicanor gate, which is the gate to the courtyard before you go into the temple. And then once again, when you establish these points, then the temple couldn't fit over here. So let's say this. Let's say that we're not 100% positive about these measurements. But here's what is interesting. Is it just pure coincidence that all of these markers measure exactly 500 royal cubits? Take whatever measurement you want. Why are they all the same? Why is it the same from there to here, here to there? Now, I will tell you, that one down there is 853 feet. A slight difference. They believe that's the case because you had the offal and they had a hard time maybe seeing at that end down there. Why do all these measurements line up exactly the same? And why do we see these ancient stones that are dating back to Solomon's time? Why are we seeing these ancient stones? So I am convinced, there's no doubt in my mind that the temple was on the Temple Mount platform here. It wasn't in the city of David. I'll just read you a verse. It says in 2 Chronicles 5:2, "Then Solomon assembled to Jerusalem the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the leaders of the fathers' households of the sons of Israel, to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, which is Zion." So we know where the city of David is. Archaeology continues to affirm that. So it says that Solomon brought which direction? Up. Is this higher than the city of David? Yes. Okay. So he brought it up, and then it says out of the city of David. Out of. Okay. So it can't be in the city of David. That's what Scripture says. Now, I won't get into it, but some say, well, he brought it up for a kind of like a parade and then took it back. No, because then verses later said that's where it then resided permanently. And then after that is when the Shekinah glory of God, just had a cloud that filled the whole place. And then again, there's no way. Put the temple down in the city of David. You saw how big it is. It's tiny. There's no way a temple's going to fit down there. And there's no way that they're going to be able to build walls way out into the Kidron Valley. That's huge. I mean, for Herod to extend just the southern wall, just a little bit, he had to have big arches underneath. Arches. It's not a solid fill. He had to do arches because the weight was so heavy that it would just bulge out the walls. So he made arches underneath that you can still see to this day, so that then he could extend it. So once again, I'm convinced, I think all of these measurements are not just coincidental. And we know by historians that the Hasmoneans added on. Okay, well, let's continue on here to the eastern gate. Now, as we're approaching this gate, this is absolutely amazing. This gate is really prestigious. It's really elegant. It's really noble. There's just a lot to see here. So this is going to be a special time right here around this eastern gate. This upper part was built in about 800 AD. But we have down in the lower part, there's ancient posts and stuff that have been discovered that show us that this is where the eastern gate was. So there's no doubt that this is the eastern gate. Once again, this above now is added on in around 800 or so AD during the Muslim period here. And then once again, then they closed it up, but it kind of acts as a little mosque down in there right now. So we can't go down the stairs. We got this fine gentleman here watching us. Thank you, thank you. We're doing good, thank you. So now we're going to walk along this eastern wall here, and Once again, we're going to go down to a curious bend in the wall. You can't see it from the inside, but you see photographs, you can see it clearly, this bend in the wall. Yeah, this is from about 800 AD during the Muslim reign. This right here. Yeah, but it's built where the eastern gate, original eastern gate was, because we can have archaeological evidence underneath that shows that. You have to watch our video on the Temple Mount and you'll see.
Jesus comes right through.
Yes, Jesus does come right through here. Well, he did come through here and he came and went through here all the time. Some think that when he did the triumphal entry that maybe he went through Stephen's gate, because that was by called the sheep gate as well, up by the pools of Bethesda, up in that area. But yeah, he did come through this regularly.
And when he was young?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so Jesus probably came to Jerusalem from his childhood till his last trip here, probably 100, 150 times, easily. If he died when he was 33 and he came here, let's say a minimum of 5 or 6, so 5 times 30 is 150. So what did we have along this wall here? Does anybody know what we had along this wall here? We had what was called Solomon's Portico. It was a covered colonnade that ran all along here. And that's where you could sit, you could talk. Understand that the Temple Mount was a major hangout place for teachings. The rabbis would bring their students up here for dialogue, for religious purposes, for reading. It was the spiritual center. And so when these Jews would come here, at least 3 times a year, they were supposed to come. They would travel sometimes, depending on the distance. If they're coming from the Galilee area and bringing a family, it might take them 4 or 5 days, maybe a week they would stay. So it was a major thing to come to Jerusalem. It was just, to them and they would sing the songs of ascent. It was just a festive time of getting right with the Lord. So on these major feasts, then you would have hundreds of thousands of Jews that would be coming to Jerusalem. And of course, we know on Pentecost, we had at least 30,000. There might have been many, many more. Just by doing the simple math, I've said at least 15 to 30, but we know that 3,000 were saved. In order for 3,000 Jews to be saved, you have to have a big crowd, because not everybody's going to believe. So anyway, God in his sovereignty had Herod enlarge this so huge that you could fit 100,000 people up here easy, a couple 100,000. So it could handle the crowds. And this is where the early church then would meet, on the Temple Mount. So you had Solomon's Portico that ran along here, which they could sit under. It was shaded. They could sit under and they could talk. We'll be looking at some of the verses as we go through here.
They give tours underneath the Temple Mount?
No tours underneath. We'll be looking at it. Where you can get underneath is a mosque. So what Herod the Great added on to using these arches, that's now a mosque. No one can dig up here archaeologically. It's prohibited because the Muslims don't want any archaeology up here.
I just heard there's a lot of caverns under there.
Yes, and especially on the original platform that Solomon built, there are many, many cisterns, and we'll be talking about that as well. So what we're walking on right now, just to repeat, then was Solomon's Temple Mount platform. Okay, we're going to go over here to this corner over here where these steps are, and you'll be able to look down into something very amazing. We'll just go to this edge here. Okay, so now just come over here to this edge here if you would, and just kind of get in this area and you can kind of look at me. Okay, so from the offset in the wall where we were just at, where the northern side of the Solomon's Temple Mount platform was, so from that point, measuring to about right here, we see a curious bend in the wall. The wall is slightly now going to go out. It's not going to be straight, it's going to slightly go to our left a little bit. And when you see photos of it from above, you can see it very clearly. And then stones and stuff change. So then right about here is then where Solomon's platform would end. And then it would go up to that corner over there where we started. So from that point there to this curious bend in the wall, from that offset up there in the wall to the bend in the wall here, you're going to get 500 royal cubits, 861 feet, 262 meters. And then this way, going this way, it's less than 1% difference. It's 853 from here. And they believe that the reason why it was a little bit different here is that there was the offal here, and that sighting down it, they had some challenges. But once again, we have at this side, we have this curious bend in the wall, and then at that side, we have Barclay's Gate where we can see where the extension went out. So let's just play a game of subtraction, okay? We know where the Hasmonean wall began. And then about halfway over, on the other side over there, you see where these arches are? Now that is going to be going into Herod's expansion. Underneath there are the arches he built to hold up that expansion. So when we do subtraction, we know where the Hasmonean expansion started and ended. We know where Herod's expansion started and began. We can see the evidence in the bend in the wall and the stones changing. And where Solomon did on the outside, there's a seam in the wall where the stones changed. They don't continuously go there. They're butted up to one another, which shows that that was a corner. If you subtract the Hasmonean expansion, you subtract Herod's expansion, which we can see, what are you left with? You're left with a platform up here of 500 square cubes. It is 861 feet, 262 meters. So the archaeological evidence, I believe, is overwhelmingly affirms this. And then once again, it can't be in the city of David. So where else can this temple be? And when Hadrian destroyed Jerusalem in 132, 135 AD, what does he build where the Dome of the Rock is? Where the temple was. Temple to Jupiter, we know that. And then when the Muslims come in 631 and they tear down that and they build a shrine here, where do they build it? They investigate, they build it exactly where the temple was. Also, this area right here, this is a phenomenal thing that happened. It used to be flat. It was around 1999, roughly I believe, is the Muslims did an illegal dig. They took out hundreds and hundreds of dump trucks out of here and they dumped it in the Kidron Valley because they wanted access and they wanted to turn this into a mosque down here. Down under there was also by the Crusaders called Solomon's Stables. And they did probably use it for stables, the Crusaders. So the Arabs did a illegal dig. It wasn't authorized. But you see all of this, they dumped it in the Kidron Valley. So guess what happened? The dig that the Jews or the Israelis wanted to do, the Muslim did it for them. And so they dumped it in the valley, and then they took that material and they held it up north up here on the hill, and it's called what? The Sifting Project. And they're sifting through all of that stuff, and they're just finding loads and loads of evidence. This is the temple. They have put together the tiles that were up here from all the bits. It's just overwhelming what they have found here that shows that this was the area of the Temple Mount. Now this part over here is going to be from the Hasmonean expansion, but probably what happened, we know that the Kidron Valley was a dump. So it might be that over in this area that they might have maybe dumped some of their trash and stuff, and so that's what they were able to dig, and they're sifting through now. It's called the Sifting Project. It's up on Mount Scopus up here. Has anyone been to it? Okay. So, and they're just finding loads of evidence, aren't they? Okay, you got to sift through 2 buckets. That's awesome. Okay? If some of you are staying on after this trip, that might be something that you would want to do. Once again, I don't have time to go through it all because our purpose up here is not to just debate this debate. I just wanted to show you where the original Temple Mount platform is, give you a little bit of evidence, but what we really want to focus on is things in the Bible that happened here. Okay, that's what we're going to be focusing on now. So now we're going to walk around over here though, and now we're going to look to what I believe and I think Scripture supports is where Pentecost happened. So now let's go around over here. If you want the full meal deal on the evidence, then watch our video. It's 1 hour and 35 minutes long. And it provides an overwhelming argument of why this is the place where the temple was. So we have over here, we have Solomon's Portico was over here during the time of Jesus. Now we're going to walk over here and we are going to see where there was the royal Stoa. So we'll get over here and show you about that. So then right about in here is where Herod's expansion would go. So you have access down to it, but it's about right in here where then Herod's expansion is going to go going over this way. So once again, Herod expanded this way, he expanded that way, and expanded that way. So here you can see the expansions. You want to pass that around, John, while I'm talking? Okay. So John's going to be showing you the different expansion times. Once again, these are not fairy tales. They are archaeologically proven. They're just undebatable. Okay, so while that's going around, once again, you can see that Herod expanded to the south, he expanded to the west, and he expanded to the north. He's the one, or those shortly after him, then that were responsible for the Western Wall. So the Western Wall that we're going to see is part of the wall that Herod, or those shortly after him, expanded. Part way up, the wall has smaller stones from later times, but down below, you'll be able to see the line. We'll point it out to you where Herod's stones end and then where later periods build up on top of that to repair it. So it was large, it was huge what Herod did. Okay, so now what I want you to see is over against this wall was what was called a royal Stoa. Let's walk over here. So from roughly right in here to that wall was a huge, huge structure. It was a colonnaded structure. It had columns, arched columns inside of it, multiple columns. It had a big, huge roof. It was massive inside that ran all along here. You had Solomon's Portico where you could hang out. It ran along this wall over here. But then you had this huge royal Stoa, even bigger than Solomon's Portico. And this would be where people would hang out. This is a major hangout place right here. Also, you have coming up from underneath, and we're going to be down there shortly, you have an access that came up from the southern stair. So this was a major access that came up right over there, that came up. There was also a major access, it's called Robinson's Arch, that came up from that corner. So this and here, you had the Pool of Siloam, we had the Pilgrim's Road, remember the big road? So this was a major access point coming up onto the Temple Mount. Once again, a huge structure here. Okay, well now let's talk about Pentecost. In this same area where we're at, I believe to be the best candidate for where Pentecost took place. I believe when you look at the scripture, the meaning of the Hebrew word for house, and the logistics of everything that happened, this is the most likely place. So just think about the reality of being in the area where Pentecost happened and the church was born. It's just amazing when you really think about this. So in Scripture, when it talks about Pentecost, it says when they were all gathered together in the house. Once again, it doesn't say the upper room, and the word house is used as a structure. and also used, the word means house, or as we've talked about, the house, meaning the house of prayer, the temple. So it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and Peter begins to preach. This fire comes, and a multitude gathers around him. He preaches, 3,000 people are saved. Once again, I don't see how in the world that could happen up by the upper room, because it's a residential area, very close quarters, narrow streets, and there's no reason why 30,000 people or more are going to be up there. They're just not going to be up there hanging around. No, if they're going to go up, they're going to go up to visit somebody. But there's not going to be a multitude gathered there. It's also 9 in the morning. When was the time of prayer? 9 in the morning, because it says we're not drunk with wine. It's 9 in the morning. It's the third hour he uses, 9 in the morning. So I believe biblically and logistically that this right here is the best candidate, because once again, house can be used as a structure. It's not talking about a home. It's not talking about a living quarters. It's talking about a structure. So you have a huge structure here that can qualify as house, or also you have the temple, which is the house, which the word seems to indicate the house, not any house, the house. So I believe the best candidate for where Pentecost took place is out in this area here.
Todd, was this wall taller, or was this filled in, that it was tall?
Oh, yeah. This is, what we're on. Oh, yeah, we're on top of a massive amount of, we're way up in the air. If you want, you can look out the window where Tim is, and when we're down here in a moment, you'll be able to look up, oh yeah, this is...
Okay, so it's been filled in here.
Yeah, but what Herod did, remember, in this part, the Hasmonean expansion, they just filled dirt in and then had a retaining wall, but they would have stones going this way and then this way as well to provide strength so it wouldn't bulge out. Because the Hasmonean expansion wasn't as deep out and the fall wasn't as much, they could just have a regular retaining wall. But Herod couldn't do that. So underneath us is this arches. So it's not a fill, it is a whole bunch of arches that hold this up. So anyway, I believe this is the best candidate for where Pentecost took place. If you want to step out and look over the edge, feel free to do so. Okay, well, let's walk over here and see this Aqsa Mosque. This present-day mosque, located here on the south wall of the Temple Mount platform, was originally built in around 685 to 715 AD. It has been rebuilt and restored many times over the years. Now only Muslims are allowed inside. The Israeli police may enter only if necessary. The mosque can hold around 5,000 people. So just a little background about who has control over the Temple Mount here in this area. Israel captured East Jerusalem, including the Old City and the Temple Mount area here, from Jordan during the Arab-Israeli War of 1967. Then, under a delicate status quo arrangement or agreement with an Islamic trust funded and controlled by Jordan, continued to administer the mosque, the Dome of the Rock, and the Temple Mount platform area. Israeli security forces maintain a presence on the site and have the last word, but they do this in coordination with this status quo agreement. Jews and Christians are allowed to visit on the Temple Mount here, but unlike Muslims, are prohibited from praying on the grounds under this status quo arrangement. Christians and Jews cannot enter into any of the mosque or the Dome of the Rock shrine. So more and more now Jews are allowed up on the Temple Mount, but with Israeli security. So just a little bit about the Temple Mount area here and who has control over it. So once again, the Muslims have control with this status quo agreement, but Israel and Israeli forces really do have the last word up here, and they are the ones who provide the security up here. Okay, well now let's head up to the Muslim platform where today the Dome of the Rock is, but was where the place where Solomon built the temple, Zerubbabel rebuilt it, and then Herod the Great enlarged it. So we're going to go up there and talk about some things absolutely amazing up there. So I'm really excited to share and talk with you about some of the things and showing you the things here on this platform up here. Absolutely amazing. You're really gonna like this. And on the way, we'll talk about a few things as well. So where was the beautiful gate? Some have become confused and identified the golden gate with the beautiful gate, but scripture says when Peter and John came to the temple to pray, they were going up to the temple and there was the lame man there. He was by the beautiful gate. So the beautiful gate was inside on the Temple Mount platform. It wasn't the golden gate, it was another gate inside. It was the outer gate leading to the temple. So now we are going to go up here, and I just want you to think about this. The temple is going to face east, okay? So the eastern gate would be an important entry. And so you're going to be seeing, of course, the Dome of the Rock is there. Some people really have a hard time with this. I do as well, but just look past this and just picture this temple up here, this glorious, massive temple, much larger than this. So just erase this out and put a glorious temple up there right now. We're going to go right up here. This platform was built for the Dome of the Rock. Okay, so now, is everybody here? I want you to gather around and we're going to soak this in. We're going to show you where the altar was. We're going to show you where the Holy of Holies was, where the inner court and outer courts were. So what we have here is we have the temple, we have buildings of the temple, we have the inner court, we have the outer court, we have the court of the Gentiles. So exactly where the Dome of the Rock is centered exactly over where the Holy of Holies was. And then there's evidence in there. There's a square that would fit the Ark of the Covenant. Now that rock has been really damaged and abused, okay, because it's been destroyed and rebuilt and etc. Okay, but anyway, there's evidence in there of where the Holy of Holies was. So you have the Holy of Holies over that. Then you have the holy place. And then you have this outer court. You have 4 stations around that. You have a women's section. And then outside you have the court of the Gentiles. And so then you had like a gate going in. There was a Nicanor gate. And so there was this glorious buildings and gates going into this. So now where would the altar be? Let's walk. So we have the Holy of Holies. We have the holy place. We have the inner outer courts. And the altar is going to be inside the outer courts. So the altar is going to be about right in this area here. Okay, this is where the altar is going to be. So we have this massive structure, but we still retain the dimensions of the Holy of Holies and the holy place because those are given in Scripture. They were given to Moses regarding the tabernacle. First of all, this is the area where Abraham would come to offer Isaac. This was the threshing floor of a ruin. Solomon builds a temple here. The altar is not far from where it would have been during the time of Solomon. He offers thousands of sacrifices. When the temple is dedicated, the glory of the Lord fills the temple right here. And the priests have to stop. It's just too much. So then after it's done, then Solomon prays. Then we have the kings reigning from here. We have the prophets. Of course, then we have the time of Jesus. We have Pentecost that happens right here. And we're going to have a lame man healed here. As a result of that, 5,000 people are going to get saved. And we are going to have the early church now meeting up here. There's going to be at least 8,000 within a few months that are meeting up here upon the temple. Peter's going to preach up here on Pentecost. The apostles are going to be preaching here, going to be jailed from here. Jesus is going to make probably to the temple, we've calculated during his whole life, somewhere between 100 and 150 times, probably at least maybe 30 to 40 times during his ministry. The last week of his life, he's going to preach here. He's going to be challenged here. He's going to be tested here. The Pharisees are going to send him people to test him. The Sadducees are going to send people to test him. So he's going to minister up here just in a magnificent way.
So is this the place where it'd be like every day you'd come down here and gather?
The locals, yeah, they would. And then they had hours of prayer. Once again, they had like 6 in the morning, 9, 12, 3, and 6 in the evening.
Explain a little bit more about the court of the Gentiles.
The court of the Gentiles is going to be outside the inner and outer court. So the outer court would be almost down to the arches there. So it was large. Only the Jews could come into the inner and some into the outer. No Gentiles could come into any of the courts. They would be in the outer areas, unless they were embraced and accepted in.
Did the gate of Beautiful separate the inner and the outer, or how does that work?
The Beautiful gate would be coming into the outer court. Where the arches are, maybe below would be where the Beautiful gate is.
Why would a Gentile even need to come up here?
Because it's the house of prayer for all nations. And those, even though they're Gentiles, like Cornelius, the centurion Gentile who built the synagogue in Capernaum, God's purpose for the Jews would be to an instrument to minister to the world. Okay, so that wasn't always done perfectly, but it was done. And so you would have a lot of Gentiles then that would come, a lot of people in the land, because we had the deportations, right, and the importations. So we have Assyrians here, we have Babylonians here. And so this is an area where the Gentiles could come as well. It's a house of prayer for all nations. Okay, so we're going to walk around back behind this. And of course, there is an entryway there. We can't go into it, but we're going to get as close to the Holy of Holies where it was as possible. And if you can just look in through the doors, there's a round circle in there. You're about as close to the Holy of Holies as you're going to get. In the center of the Dome of the Rock shrine is the original stone area where the Holy of Holies was located. Well, this is just absolutely amazing when you think about this now. We're just right close to where the Holy of Holies was. Isn't it amazing that those to whom the land was given are not in there? Okay, well, let's continue on, and we'll walk beside the Dome of the Rock and go to the place where the altar was located. And as we go to this place, just think about the fact that you are right where the temple was and where the altar was located. We'll do our Bible teaching at the area where the altar was and where countless sacrifices were made. This is really amazing when you think about it, so just let it all soak in. You are right beside where the temple was. Amazing just to think about this. Absolutely special to be here. Okay, we are in the area that approximately is where the altar was at. The temple was right in front of me, behind you. That's where the temple was. And then right in this area, approximately, is where the altar was. So many sacrifices would be taken here. What we're going to do now is we're going to have our Bible time. We're just going to be talking about all the things that happened up here. We also have evidence for the temple inside the Dome of the Rock, on the rock that's open. Some debate it, but there is a square that is approximately the size of what the ark would measure. So some would say that that's further evidence that the temple was right here. Once again, the Dome of the Rock is huge, but the temple was even bigger. Also, around this area here are massive cisterns up here. So there are around 37 cisterns up here and enough water for 10.5 million gallons of water, or 40 million liters. And then we had the pools of Bethesda where it was living water. So just a lot of water up here. Now let's talk about what happened in the Bible here. Again, this is the place where Abraham would come to offer Isaac as a sacrifice. And then David would purchase this threshing floor up here. The rock is a little bit higher, so the threshing floor was probably right out in here somewhere. So he would buy this threshing floor, and then Solomon would build a temple to the Lord right here. And during the dedication of Solomon's temple, what happened here? the glory of the Lord came, the Shekinah glory came and just enveloped this whole temple, this whole area, so that the priest had to stop their services. They had to stop everything. God's glory just overwhelmed everyone. From right up here, the prophets would speak. Then time would go by and the first temple in 586 then would be destroyed. However, then Zerubbabel would come back in about 535, and about 515, then a new temple would be built, smaller than the temple that Solomon built, and many who saw that cried because it was much smaller. Those who had seen the big temple, and then those who saw the smaller version, cried. The younger generation shouted for joy, but the older generation was sad. Then Nehemiah would come here, rebuild the walls around here, and then the temple was enlarged, as we've talked about, by the Hasmoneans, and then Herod would enlarge it as well, and then Herod the Great would build a renovated temple. The sacrifices never stopped. That's why the temple period is the second temple period, even though it's like we have a third temple, but because the sacrifices didn't stop, so he was able to build it in such a way where everything could continue on, but we came out with a glorious temple that was far more glorious than that of Solomon. It was massive inside. Someone says, if you haven't seen the temple, you haven't seen a beautiful building. Then it would be here that Zechariah would have a vision about John the Baptist. Zechariah was ministering here and he had this vision about John the Baptist. Then he doesn't speak till John is born, and then John the Baptist, then that event began here because Zechariah got his vision here. And then 8 days after Jesus was born, he would be dedicated right here. Jesus would be dedicated right here at the temple. And at the age of 12, he would be found here on one of the journeys his parents made. He would be found here engaging with the religious leaders, leaving them in awe of the questions and the dialogue he had with them, because he was God in the flesh, even though he was young. Then it would be right here where Jesus would be tempted by the devil to be thrown down on the pinnacle of the temple, to be thrown down. And then it would be here that Christ would teach on a regular basis. He would bring his disciples here and he would teach. Also, he would teach the masses here. He would teach the masses. We know that on the last week of his time here, the crowds just gathered around him. It would be here where the Pharisees and Sadducees would try to test him. And he was amazingly brilliant in his responses. It would be here that Christ would, in the proximate area here, is where he would cast out the money changers. People, rather than bring an animal here to sacrifice, they would just bring money and then buy the animal here rather than bringing it from a long ways away. So they were abusing and charging extra amounts of money. And so Christ said that my house will be a house of prayer, not a den of thieves. It was not far from here where Christ would be then tried at Herod's palace. And then, as we've talked about, just on the southern part of the Temple Mount is where I believe is the best candidate for where Pentecost took place. We've talked about that. Then Peter would stand up and preach and 3,000 people would be saved. Where's all the mikvahs? Right here. We have the pools of Bethesda. We have 50 mikvahs in the southern stairs area. We have many mikvahs by the western wall area. So we have a lot of water. We have the pool of Siloam, plenty of water for people to get baptized. Where the upper room is a long way from this area, and there would be no mikvahs up there for them to get baptized at. So then after Pentecost happens, this is going to be where the early church meets. This is their church. They meet on the Temple Mount and in homes. Okay, so they meet in two places, in the large gathering here, smaller gathering in homes. And then it would be here, not long after Pentecost, where then Peter and John would come up here. There's a lame man and begging for money, and Peter and John say, we don't have money, but what we have we'll give to you. In the name of Jesus Christ, rise up and walk. The guy jumps up and he's dancing, he's praising the Lord. That causes this massive gathering, massive confrontation with the religious leaders. And guess what happens? 5,000 more people right here are saved. So within a matter of months, you have a church of 8,000 people meeting on this Temple Mount. What a massive new beginning, so to speak, to the church. That just totally threw the whole Jewish community in an upheaval. And then the Jews would begin to persecute these Christians, and then they would disperse. But this would be the main center of the church. So then close by to the temple, here is where Stephen would be then martyred. So then as we come to 70 AD, because of their rejection of their Messiah, then the temple is going to be torn down. And then it's from here where a new temple will be built, right here. Then the Antichrist will reign from here for 3.5 years, setting himself up as God, demanding to be worshiped, and he will institute the mark of the beast here. And then it's here then where a new temple will be built, the millennial temple, where then Jesus and us, we will reign with Christ for 1,000 years from right here. So amazing to be here, right? Well, thank you, and may God richly bless you.